program board is made up of a cross-section of the public service. We have a number of chief officers, we have a number of CEOs of our statutory authorities, we have some of the deputies and the statutory authorities. And we came together to deliver a project, and that was to reopen the country safely to tourism. That has been our overwhelming priority, to reopen safely and to put us in a position where we don't have to shut down again. So that has been the major focus of the program board. And we have had to co-opt people from time to time. So there was a time when we were dealing with just evacuation flights. But when we then moved to welcoming tourists, we had to bring in our colleagues from the tourism department, our colleagues from Airports Authority, our colleagues from civil aviation, and of course engage with the private sector, because they are our key partners in this. So we have been really focusing on engagement, but also focusing on giving the government the very best advice possible about how we reopen our country safely. So that is the responsibility and the main purpose of our program board. The government has said to us, please don't tell us that we are ready to reopen. We would like you to prove to us that you're reopening. We want to see that you have drilled down in the various key topics and key areas to make sure that we are ready for whatever happens. So for example, on our public health side, are we ready? Is our hospital systems ready? What is our bed capacity? What happens if our hospital becomes overwhelmed? What happens if we have large numbers of persons who are sick, don't necessarily require critical care, but they need oxygen? So what are we doing to make sure that we have the necessary oxygen supply? It's all of those things that we have been looking at. That then goes to, on the other spectrum, to tourism. Well, what happens if a tourist gets sick? What happens if a tourist needs to be flown out? What provisions are we putting in place to ensure that the Caymanian people is not burdened with hospital bills of our tourists? What procedures have we put in place to ensure that our hotels are ready in terms of the sanitation protocols? Our taxis are ready with sanitation protocols. What happens if we have a tourist arrive and is sick at the airport? All of those things we have had to really think through and make sure that we have policies and procedures in place to deal with those very real issues that could arise once we reopen. We have an overriding responsibility to give the government the very best advice. But we have an opportunity to achieve something that very few countries in the world has been able to achieve. To reopen safely, to keep hospitalizations and deaths at a minimum, to keep our people safe. So everyone on that program board, has a family, has friends, has loved ones, have colleagues here. We want to keep them safe. So once you personalize it and says, I want to give the government the very best advice that keeps my mother safe, that keeps my wife safe, that keeps my children safe, that keeps my civil servants safe. When you personalize it and you think about it very carefully, then you know that you want to do the very best. And of course, our government is relying on us. All of them were elected on the basis that they were going to reopen this country safely. And the overwhelming purpose of the civil service is to make the government of the day successful. So it was those key things that really united us to make sure that our government can meet the promises it's made to our people by giving them the very, very best advice, by giving them our determination, our hard work, and everything that we could to give them the very best policy advice. Right. So the first thing to do was to break down inner silos. We could not have silo working in a situation like this. And I must say, it has been, I think, one of the most proudest movements of my time as Deputy Governor to see how we easily broke down the silos. We got everyone working together. So this was not a civil service thing. This was not a public health thing. This was not just a private sector thing. It was all of us working together for that common purpose. And I think that's when we were at our best. We have our strategic reforms implementation unit led by Ms. Rodriguez and her team. They have been sort of guiding and helping and pushing. But we also had amazing work being done by our cabinet office, who has a huge policy responsibility. So they have been doing some amazing work on our regulations. But again, no one agency can do it by themselves. So the portfolio of the civil service was focusing on policies to benefit the civil service and how would they work. But they can't do it without the assistance of other agencies in government. And that's where we really came together as a one entity with a common purpose. And that has made me really proud. We are used to relying on statistics. So our tourism, Ministry of Tourism, Department of Tourism, they have amazing statistics on visitors and where they come from and the demographics and all of that. But we realized, and they were able to give us some very, very helpful information as to what we can expect our first visitors to look like in terms of demographics and the various statistics. But we also needed to provide the government with modeling. So if you allow tourists in, what will that do to hospitalizations? What will that do to sickness? So the hospitals can then plan, have their plan working well. So we got assistance from the UK in terms of some modeling. But I'm very proud to say that we had our own Caymanian modeling team that did some amazing work for us, that provided us with key information about infection rates and hospitalization rates and death rates. So we now have a good idea. And of course, modeling is never perfect, but we have a really good idea as to what we can expect when now and when we reopen in terms of statistics and infection levels, hospitalization levels. The collaborative approach that we have taken with our elected leaders, giving them the very best advice, our elected leaders making the very best decisions for the people of the Cayman Islands. I'm very confident in that. I'm very confident in the advice that we have given them. Dr. Lee reached out to Public Health UK if we ever needed advice about how to live with COVID. The UK has been doing that for quite some time. We have an amazing private sector who has been with us, all the time, making sure that they were following our policies, but also giving us advice. And I think our high vaccination rates, some of the highest in the world, all of those things put together give us the very best chance to open safely and not have to shut down again.